This is Reid Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio, broadcasting out of KGAB AM and the Town Square Network, serving the Intermountain West, Easy 101 Colorado Springs, and 780 AM Denver. Hello, New Mexico to Montana and Utah to Nebraska. Happy Saturday. You know, this is my last AM broadcast for the rest of 2013 and a portion of 2014. And first of all, I want to tell you, this is This is a Saturday after Thanksgiving. I want to tell you thank you, you 300,000 plus or minus weekly listeners to the On the Right Side broadcasts. We'll meet up again on the AM airwaves, but I'm going to continue because I do this because I love this country. And I love all you folks. Yes, even you libs who listen to me because you just love to hate me. So each week on Saturdays, we're going to be posting in the morning, just like we do now. We're going to be posting about a 5-minute podcast by me, just kind of a summary of what we're going over that week. And then we're going to be posting articles from all sorts of sources, just as we do on shows now. But it will be your one-stop shop. I mean, if you want to get caught up on what's happened for the week, behind the scenes, the rest of the story, behind the big stories, and in advance of the big stories that the media carries, go to ontherightsideradio.com. Take your time, browse through the articles, read the ones of interest. Absolutely, folks, look at the archives. I'm going to be referring to them a little bit during the course of this show because there's 2.5, almost 3 years of shows. And I mean big national names who really know their stuff that I've interviewed on all sorts of topics, from terrorism to international to monetary to financial to economics to health, you name it. And you ladies, I'm going to tell you that the attack that is going on from the progressives, even though they couch it in the warm, fuzzy terms that you like to hear and that you can't argue with, the intent is far more sinister, as you know from the last 3 or 4 shows where I've had experts on explaining what progressives are and how they originated, and what their history is, and what their goals and intent is. Never mind their fuzzy words. I think we have seen enough over the last month or so, and certainly over the course of this year with NSA, IRS, Benghazi, and now healthcare, to know that, shall we say, the government just doesn't tell us the truth. And the liar in chief, Mr. Obama, he's the worst of them all. Of course, the guy at the top sets the corporate culture. It's true of a company, it's true of a government. So, he got elected. This is what we got. They say that you get the government that you deserve. I hope not. I hope a lot of people have woken up. But ladies, this is an attack on you and your family and your children. Understand that. I've talked about this in the past. Progressives must destroy the 3 pillars of American values to succeed in their overall long-term game plan, which, by the way, right now they're doing well at. And that is faith, family, and the Constitution. And they're all tied in together. Obamacare is just kind of a symptom. Today we're going to be talking about, and I'll tell you how I'm going to structure this show as my last show, because I don't want to be just all doom and gloom. I want to tell you what my prognostications are, and I'm going to give you some tips, which you can take or not as you wish, as to what I would do if I were in your situation, given what I think is going to occur in these several different realms. I'm going to be talking to you about, of course, Obamacare, because that's the scourge, the smallpox that is not going to go away. I'm going to be talking to you about a little bit about the international, because there's some international things shaping up that you don't know about. I mean, yes, you've heard about Iran, etc., and we'll brush on that. But there's some other things going on with China and Russia and the BRIC countries that you really need to be aware of and kind of keep at least a partial eye on, because it could affect your daily life. And then we're going to be talking about the economy and the financial markets, because there's some big things coming at us here. And then we're going to be talking about your house. Okay? Those of you who rent, what's going to be happening with your rents, those of you who own homes, what you can expect to see in the real estate markets, and those of you who are thinking about buying land, which I really recommend, what's going on there. And then we're going to talk about some alternatives to some, shall we say, elderly groups, and elderly, I mean, over 60, that you can belong to rather than the Obama puppets groups that are out there right now. And finally, I'm going to wind it up with some fun stuff about the books, because book 3 is coming out. I'm very excited about that. Threads West, an American Saga, and the Threads West series. In each of these little segments, I'm going to tell you, we're going to brush briefly on what is. Hopefully you know that by now. Then we're going to talk about what I think is going to happen. And then we're going to talk about what you can do to protect yourself. The good news here is that America is a great country. We are exceptional. Don't listen to what these morons in Washington, including the chief moron, tell us. We are exceptional in every sense. And that exceptionalism, it comes from each of us. It comes from our spirit. It comes from our collective spirit. It comes from our unique nature as Americans and the unique nature of this country which we have to fight to preserve, the United States of America. The great thing about a huge downpour, a dark, boiling, roiling cloudburst, is that after the rain there's always sun. And we're going to have a torrential downpour between here and the next sunny period in American history. But if you're ready, if you're informed, if you take the right steps, you're going to come through it just fine. And maybe not our kids, because it's going to take a long time, but certainly our grandkids are going to start to enjoy the America that was, obviously, changed for those times 50 years from now. At least that's my prognostication on the very long term. Now, let me tell you, number one, I'm going to have some book signings in everybody's area. I mean, the publishers, I must be a masochist, they must be sadists, because they've lined me up with all sorts of book signings this December. And we got all sorts of fun things happening. So if you go to the Threads West Series site, threadswestseries.com, it'll be published there. But in the meantime, just to give you a feel, I have a signing at Barnes & Noble Loveland today, in fact, from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. I have a book signing at Fort Collins, Barnes & Noble, tomorrow from 11 to 6. Denver West on Monday from 12 to 8. Barnes & Noble Citadel right down there in Colorado Springs, for you Colorado Springs listener, Easy 101, from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock. That's on Tuesday, the 12/3. Then at Pueblo, you listeners down there, from Wednesday, 12/4, from 2 to 8. And by the way, folks, I usually run about a half an hour late. Then I have another signing at Barnes & Noble Loveland on Friday, the 6th, from 12:30 to 8. A signing at Barnes & Noble Boulder on Saturday from 10 o'clock to 4. That's the 7th. A signing at Barnes & Noble Lone Tree, Saturday, 12/7, also from 5 to 9. A book signing at Barnes & Noble Westminster on Sunday, the 8th of December, from 12 to 8. And then Barnes & Noble Thorn Creek on Tuesday from 12 to 8. Barnes & Noble Fort Collins, Wednesday, 12/11, from 12 to 8. And then Barnes & Noble Pueblo, again, folks, you folks down there in Pueblo, on Friday, the 13th. Hopefully that's not auspicious, from 11 to 9. And then at Thornton, Saturday, 12/14, 10 to 8. And then Barnes & Noble Aurora Southland, Sunday, 10 to 8 o'clock. So a whole bunch of signings. Hopefully there's one in your area, you folks in Denver, Fort Collins, Loveland, Pueblo, and Colorado Springs. I'd love to see you down there. The next thing I want to tell you is that as of yesterday, our really cool Threads West store opened for Black Friday. I've been kind of promising that on my little ditties with the stations, when I do my little spots throughout the week. And I've been telling you about it, but it's actually even better than I thought. The publishers have really done a great job, and it was a surprise to me too. And some great deals and great gifts. Let me tell you just about them real quick. You probably know about the gift packs of 2 or 3 books or books and audio, etc. They got all sorts of combinations. They're great prices. And this is on threadswestseries.com, folks. You can go right to it. There's a link right on the front page. But also, and I didn't know this, they have branded holiday stockings, and they're autographed, which is really cool, for like $10. I mean, really nice stuff. Then they have holiday serving trays, including 2 books. The stockings, by the way, are also stuffed with books if you want them to be. Cool little present. Then they have the collector's edition bundle, which is all autographed by yours truly, and great little kind of canvas gift sack in it with the Threads West logo. Then they have customized mouse pads signed by me, which is really kind of cool. I just say there's some great ideas here. Then they have like a little Santa's sled. It's just a great little gift with all 3 books in it. And by the way, for instance, that deal, the books are $14.95, $15 each, plus tax, etc., etc., etc. If you go to the store, like the Santa's 3-book bundle, you get the sleigh, which is really cool. You can keep it as an ornament, whatever. And the 3 books is $45. Pretty cool. And then you can buy the books themselves. And they also have fleece throws, which are really, really nice. Anyway, they got all sorts of cool things on the store and some really great gifts. Some gifts, by the way, for people who are not readers, and gifts certainly for people who are readers, and all sorts of combinations. So, if you get a chance, spend 5 minutes and do some shopping. I mean, one-stop shopping, you can get a whole bunch of stuff done for a whole bunch of folks. It is Christmas time. And thank you, publishers, for doing a super job on that and surprising your author. That was pretty cool. All right, at the end of this show, I'm going to read you some excerpts from book 3, and just to kind of give you a feel for that book. I think you're going to enjoy it. Of course, I'm biased. I'm the author, but right now we're going to get into some more serious nitty-gritty stuff. We're going to start off with Obamacare, and folks, I'm not going to go into great detail on this stuff because I hope my listeners kind of have their ears open or their eyes open and their ears attuned to what's going on out there. I mean, I hope that you are keeping yourself informed, even if it's 10 minutes a day. You owe it to you. You owe it to your family. Ladies, you owe it to your kids. First of all, there's several lawsuits percolating down the pike. And I think, here's my prognostication, I think one or more of them is going to be successful. I had Larry Kawa, a doctor, on just a few weeks ago. Great show. He is suing because Obama doesn't have the right to change the law. It's unconstitutional. There's a suit by Oklahoma, which seems to have some traction. There's another lawsuit which kind of goes after the religious mandate, which Hobby Lobby has filed. That's going to the Supreme Court soon. And then there's a lawsuit by small business plaintiffs, kind of a class action suit on the small business. I mean, there's some suits here that have traction. The government has been unable to get them dismissed, and I think you're going to see these suits take hold. In addition, you're going to see Mr. Obama's fix not work at all. I have all sorts of articles on these matters that'll be posted with this show. So please read them because they'll go into detail for you. But somewhere between 80 and 129 million more people are going to lose their health policies over the next, name it, 2 to 14 months. The Democrats, who remember, voted unanimously to take away your policies, increase your premiums, increase your deductibles, lessen your access, lower the quality of care. That was a unanimous vote by Democrats. Folks, your Colorado congressmen and Colorado senators, those Democrats, they need to go away. They need to get unelected. Get rid of these people. Bennett, who voted for this bill, Bennett, who voted against the amendment that NZ offered in 2010 because NZ caught this subterfuge that they did to force the cancellation of these policies that the president and Sebelius and a whole bunch of others then lied about, including Bennett. He voted against that. That's right. So if you want to keep a guy in office who doesn't care about your family, doesn't care about your health insurance, and wants to control your life, by all means, vote for him again. Vote for another Democrat. Okay? And they're not Democrats anymore. They're progressives. The Democratic Party, as we used to know it, does not exist. It is now the Progressive Party. And we know what progressives are. They are closet or overt communists. Period. That's what they are. As Marx said, from each according to their abilities to each according to their needs. Now that's how he wrote it in his manifesto. The progressive lingo is spread the wealth, fair share, social justice, redistribution, income equality. It all means the same, folks. 2 + 2 is 4. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it flies like a duck, it's a duck. By the way, death panels. I'm not a great fan of Sarah Palin, I'll have to admit, for a number of reasons. But old Sarah was correct on the death panels. It's called the IPAB. It's discussed in my previous shows. I have a bunch of shows on healthcare. In fact, a series of 5 just over the last several months. Listen to them. But the IPAB will determine what the costs of services are and what reimbursements are. In other words, by controlling the purse, they will control what kind of services your doctor can offer you. This will include those of you who are lucky enough to be not in the 129 million losing your policies. That's right. If you have a private policy or employer policy and you're fortunate enough not to lose it, the IPAB will still be able to control what your doctor can do with and for you. Not to mention, and we've discussed this before, many doctors are being dropped out of the plan. You've probably all heard Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, Children's Hospital, Mount Sinai. I mean, these are the finest hospitals in the world, never mind the country, are not acceptable to Obamacare. We're not going to increase health care. We're going to lower the quality of care for everybody so that it's even, the fair share. And don't think that doesn't affect your family, ladies and gentlemen. So you're going to see a huge disruption. Here's my prognostication. A huge disruption in, number one, what caregivers can do, what caregivers you can see, and the quality of the services and the quantity of the services they can deliver. In addition, you will find, folks, that the hospital that you're used to might not be the hospital that you can use anymore because it won't be covered. Hospitals are a double whammy. Not only does the law restrict which hospitals, but the new networks through the Obamacare plan restricts the hospitals. And additionally, and many of you don't know this, but doctors can only refer to one hospital. They can't refer to 5 hospitals. If you have Dr. Jones and he refers to XYZ hospital, that's who he refers to. So if you get Dr. Jones because you've lost Dr. Smith, contrary to the president's promises, and Dr. Jones doesn't refer to hospital XYZ even though you've loved it. You gave birth to your kids there. One of your children had an appendectomy. Dad had a new knee. I mean, whatever it happens to be, you're not going to be able to go to that hospital anymore. So, here's what you folks need to do. And I think, by the way, that it's going to take a long time for this to get sorted out. Let me explain something to you. If this was really about covering the uninsured, the 15% of the American population who had pre-existing conditions, which, by the way, I happen to agree with, you should be covered, or for some reason had some other, shall we say, gaps in insurance, or who were not insured, that 15% of the population could have been handled with a 100-page bill, folks. Easily. But they didn't choose to do that. Instead, they chose to screw with the 85% of us who are quite happy with our healthcare services, our doctors, and where we go. Now, if that doesn't tell you what the real motive here is, nothing will. On one hand, they could have taken care of the 15% with 100 pages and done something good and improved the system as a whole, with tort reform, with insurance across state lines, with health savings accounts. There's a number of ways. But instead, they chose to wreck the system for the other 85%. Think about that. There are no coincidences. What you folks need to do is you need to set up some health savings accounts. Whether or not you get a tax deduction, you need some money for a rainy day. You need to have money to go see somebody that you really trust if you have a really big problem. You need to really investigate what your alternatives are right now. You need to look at the networks that these different plans offer, what doctors are in them, who those doctors refer to in terms of hospitals. You really need to get conversant in this stuff. And there'll be articles on the website about it. There's going to be thousands of doctors dropped also, folks. And there's going to be another thousands of doctors who retire. And more thousands of doctors who establish private boutiques. For those of you who can afford it, you might want to start investigating some private health boutiques. This is where you go in and you make an arrangement with the doctor, you pay them direct, there is no insurance, or you submit a reimbursement to the insurer. You're going to see more and more docs going this way. They have overhead, they got a mortgage payment, they got to pay the phone bill and the light bill. They have to make money, or they're not going to do this. Many of them are carrying student loan debt, a whole nother problem we'll talk about here in a few minutes. So start thinking ahead. Particularly you ladies. You ladies control the health dollars. You control the health in your family. Let's face it. Think ahead. You got to think right now in terms of chess, not checkers. And last on the healthcare subject, quite frankly, don't believe a word the government tells you on healthcare. They have lied to us through their teeth about everything from our premiums going down to keeping our doctor, to keeping our hospital, to keeping our policy, and they knew it. These are absolute, positive, direct, outright, in-your-face lies for a specific reason. And it's directed at the 85% who are happy with their insurance, not at the 15% who needed help. You folks in the military, you folks down around the Springs and elsewhere, your TRICARE thing, I had this on this last show, and I gave you some bits and pieces. Listen to it, read the articles. Your TRICARE is going to be changing too. Nobody is going to be unaffected by this. I think that even in the end, lower echelon federal employees are going to be affected by this. Because you know why? It's broke, folks. Here's my prognostication. Right now, Obamacare is $1.4 trillion underwater, and that's if it was working. As we all know, it's not. The congressional budget says $2.7 trillion cost, and I guarantee you it's going to be $5 or $6 trillion. And they only have $1.4 million in the kitty. $715 billion from Medicare, $675 billion new taxes. Where are they going to make up the difference? A combination of premiums and new taxes. Your taxes are going to be going up. That's my prognostication. That means you need to fight for total tax reform. Eliminating loopholes, except for mortgage interest, one or two of them, key things to industries. But we need to eliminate mortgage loopholes to other industries. This crony capitalism has to stop. We need a flat tax or a fair tax. There's arguments for both. But the system needs to be revamped. It's way past the Band-Aids, which, by the way, is exactly the status of Obamacare right now. You're not going to Band-Aid this thing together, but the 2 or 3 years it's going to take to get rid of it, for it to wind down, for it to collapse, is going to be calamitous with long-term ramifications on your pocketbook and your health and the stress level of your family. And that includes the military. Those things I recommended for the civilian population, you military folks, thank you for your service. And you know what? You better get your ducks in a row. You're not going to be able to count on it. I'm telling you. There's no money. There's no money to do this deal. 2 + 2 is 4. It's not 5. If you want to see what's going on, I'm going to post the article on the website. Take a look at what's happening in California, who is, 80% or was 80% pro-Obamacare. I mean, premium increases, drop coverages, tripling of deductibles. It's a wreck. All right, look. The other thing you need to know if you do decide to go on the Obamacare site is that they are taking all your private information, they are sharing it with other agencies, and the site is not secure. You can listen to congressional testimony. The videos are on last week's show and this week's show. 4 experts, they're involved in this stuff. They got no axe to grind. They're apolitical. They were absolutely honest, and every single one of them said, I would not touch that site with a 10-foot pole. It is absolutely insecure. And do you know why Obama wants your information up front before you can even browse? For political reasons, folks. This is all tied in with NSA, etc. They're building their data banks for their voting base. Do you understand? And the IPAB will have this information. They'll be making determinations on whether Sally or Sue, liberal or conservative, gets this, that, or the other service. It's all tied in. It is one scummy mess. Think ahead. 3-dimensional chess, not checkers. All right. Let's go to the international. We know about Iran. We know about the Mideast. Here's my prognostication. Sometime in the next 12 to 24 months, at the very least, a regional war will break out in the Mideast. I think there's a high likelihood that Israel will actually use tactical nuclear weapons to take out the Iranian nuclear workings, shall we say. This nonsense BS deal that Obama and Kerry are crowing about with their little talking points out of the White House, which, by the way, have been totally refuted by Tehran. Iran says that the talking points Kerry and Obama are using are absolutely false. How much hope do you have for this agreement when the 2 people who signed the document say it says different things? And I would like to believe the American government over the mullahs in Tehran, but I think that we've learned that maybe we can't. And in any event, whatever the document says, what Iran is telling us is what they're going to do. If they say we don't believe the document says that, I guess that's a kind of a clue as to where they're going to go with their actions, huh? Israel's not going to stand for it. You might see a very strange bedfellow, which, by the way, was kind of the precursors to World War I, secret alliances, surprising alliances. You might see bedfellows in the form of Saudi Arabia, who's as upset for different reasons as Israel is with this Iranian so-called deal. And you might see a joint effort to take out Iran's nuclear facilities. In any event, the Mideast is going to boil over. You got low gas prices now. Thank God America's getting energy independent. No thanks to Obama, who's actually cut permits on federal ground despite his nonsense about how it's all his, he should get accolades for our energy production increasing. So, if you can stock up on fuel, and I don't mean putting jerry cans in your garage that can blow up. Those of you who live in rural areas, get yourself a 300-gallon tank. Fill it up here in the next 2 or 3 months while fuel prices are low, because they're going to skyrocket. You folks who don't have that kind of luxury, you live in suburbia or whatever, think about what you can do, because it's not going to get any less expensive. And that's going to tie in with our next little segment, which is economy and finance, because we have those storm clouds headed our way. In fact, the storm clouds are here. The rain from the storm clouds is headed our way. In addition, on the international front to the Mideast, there's some things you really need to keep your eye on. Number one, you need to keep your eye on Russian pressure on what used to be the former eastern states. The Ukraine is kind of under, and all those breakaway republics are scared to death of Russia right now. You can see them vacillating in their support for the West because Putin's putting the screws on them, and he knows Obama isn't going to do anything. Obama is not going to do anything. Obama is nothing. He has no respect of any world leader. Don't let them tell you anything different. They don't trust him. They don't believe him. They think he's weak. It is not a good period in international relations because power fills vacuums, right? Think about your personal life. Think about the office. If somebody in power steps away, other people fight to fill the vacuum. It creates conflict. That's what you're going to see on the international scene. China, I told you in last week's show about their non-coincidental movies about nuking America, number one, and number two, about how America has declared war on them. State-run Chinese TV. There's all sorts of conflicts brewing with China. Control over the South China Sea. Control over the Japanese islands, around which there's now been a huge oil find, and we know how thirsty for energy China is. You have Japan in there that could claim these islands. China. You have Taiwan. You have China building a massive military. You have us dismantling a military. There'll be articles on that on this show too. Okay, and then of course you have the Japanese, who are just beginning to rebuild their military for the first time since World War II because of China, and because they can't rely on the American umbrella anymore under Obama. So all this has long-term ramifications also, doesn't it, ladies, right? Like your kids in military service, conflicts all over the world, big conflicts because little conflicts were not met with strength and therefore kind of raged out of control until they got too large to control. Our big problem areas right now is the Mideast, particularly Iran. Asia. Don't think North Korea. If they had a chance and had nothing to lose, and obviously they have little to lose, would not try and launch a strike against the United States. Could they do a lot of physical damage? No. But just one or two EMPs above the United States. I did a show on this about 6 months ago. A guy who's studied extensively. Go back and listen to it. You can find it right in the archives. He's written a book on it. I mean, it'd knock us back to the Stone Age. And what does North Korea have to lose? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And if goaded by China or bribed by China, who knows what could happen here? So that brings us to the point, and I prognosticate you're going to see these conflicts. I mean, hopefully not to the point of some kind of nuclear strike on the United States or EMP, but you need to keep that in the back of your mind. But you need to be prepared, folks. Go back in the archives. Nancy Steorts, she worked for 5 presidents, ran the National Safety Transportation Administration. Okay, we go over a whole bunch of things, and in other shows, and I've posted articles about what you can do so that your household is as ready as it can be in terms of food supplies, in terms of all the things you haven't thought about, like wooden matches so you can light candles when they burn down, little things like that. Think about it. If you never have to use it, terrific. If you buy a bunch of extra food and everything is going hunky-dory in a year, you open the cans and you eat it, big deal. And along these lines, terror is going to become more prevalent around the world, and I think unfortunately in the United States. You combine a lack of immigration enforcement by this president who determines what laws he can follow and when and for why and who's going to give him how much campaign money, and you couple that with the potential for nuclear proliferation, North Korea, Iran, etc. You couple that with the lack of respect that China, Russia, etc. have for us. It's not a good recipe. It does not bake a pleasant cake. So I think you will see more terrorism. I don't know what you do to prepare yourself for that other than the things to get your household safe, your household stocked. You know, you need to step out of your normalcy bias, particularly you ladies. You ladies typically run the household. Step back, think for a moment. What if there's no gas at the pumps? What if the shelves in Safeway are bare? What if the water supply is cut off? What if you don't have electricity? And plan accordingly. The key is making it through. Making sure your family makes it through. And if you never have to do it, terrific. Terrific. But if you ever do, it could be the difference between life and death. Let's talk about economy. Look, I've been saying this for all sorts of shows. You can listen to my show on QE3. You can listen to George Udix, who I had on twice, huge international economists, and a host of other shows over the last year particularly, and is in fact going back 2 years. The Federal Reserve is printing money like a sieve, $85 billion a month. Who knows what else they're doing? I mean, you know, that's a rather secretive outfit. But the bottom line is, folks, when you print money, you have inflation. Period. End of story. Italicize, bold, capitalize. It may be damped down here and there by conflicting policies, by lack of robust economic growth, but in the end, what you have more of is worth least. I mean, you know that, right? This is just basic economics. And if you have $4 trillion running around the world right now, which is what we have, when you normally only have 800 million, it's called M2, money supply, what happens? Each one of those dollars is worth less. And you folks know, never mind the crap that the government gives you about the CPI. Realstatistics.com. Follow that site. Look at it for 5 minutes every week. It'll tell you what's really happening with unemployment, employment, CPI, GDP. It's the real numbers before the government starts screwing with how they compute them. You know, that CPI, and I've said this before, doesn't include fuel or food. What human can get along without fuel or food? Yet they're not in the numbers. Look, you should talk with your investment advisors or somebody who kind of is in the know. I can't give you investment advice. But you need to do something that shelters your dollars from inflation. Because in the end, that can do more damage than even higher taxes. It can do more damage than even decreasing income or greater health expense. If you take your portfolio of dollars and you figure that inflation we'll take a number, 10% a year, which by the way is low. Do you realize that basically your portfolio is worth zero in 6 years? That's right. Think about it. It compounds, you know. It's not just simple 10% a year. It's 11% in year 2. It's 12.2% or 12.1% in year 3. It adds right up, folks. So do what you need to do within your portfolios to safeguard yourself. And that's normally tangible assets. Some people say gold, silver, whatever. Okay. I happen to like land myself. You know, it's solid, it's out there, it's tangible, it's a place to retreat to, it's a place to grow food on. It's a place to get out of any civil strife which might erupt in the cities. I mean, this knockout game stuff. Never mind the fact that this is prompted by a president who is racist, who purposely divides religions and races and creeds and incomes so that he can form coalitions and further his power under the guise of lies. I don't think this situation is going to get better. I don't think the situation is going to get better because I don't think the purposefully divisive nature of rhetoric is going to cease. And I don't think it's going to get better because I don't see the economy improving greatly over the next several years. It can't with these regulations. The EPA just slapped us with 134 new regulations last week. You know what it's doing to coal. It's shutting down the plants. There's been no nuclear plants built. We can't get the Keystone Pipeline in, for God's sakes. Look, the bottom line is that this economy is in for a very rough time over the next 2, 3, 4 years. That's going to include inflation. It's going to include stagnant growth. It might even include, when the full impacts of Obamacare really kick in next year, a recession, because people aren't going to hire, people are going to fire, people are going to cut full-time to part-time. I mean, there's all sorts of effects that Obamacare has over and above the horrible effects it has on your health and your family's health and your stress levels, which, by the way, last time I checked, has to do with your health. So much for making you healthier. But try and look big picture and try and protect the assets that you have by having them in inflation hedges. Safe ones. Those that are portable, those that can do something for you, those that maybe have ancillary benefits. They tickle your heart and your wallet. They provide security as well as pleasure and financial safety. You're going to see regulations coming at us like you've never seen before. You know, this nuclear option in the Senate, this cleared the way, and you probably heard this on the mainstream media, for 3 new judges, which will tip the balance of the power of court, and they're appointed for life, by the way, and they're radical judges that are being appointed, at the D.C. Circuit Court. There's going to be a lot of cases going to the Supreme Court. But the D.C. Circuit Court is the court that rules on all the regulations. You know, Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, and the EPA. I want you to know that the EPA is getting so outrageous that they are actually putting together bans on wood burning. Now, if you happen to have a wood stove or a fireplace, or if you live in a rural area and depend, as 7% of Americans do, depend primarily on wood for your primary heat source, this is an amazing thing. At the same time, you have electricity rates. These articles will be posted on the site, that have gone up more than 40% over the last 2 years. Remember, Obama in 2008 said, the cost of, and this is a quote, the cost of electricity will necessarily skyrocket, end quote. Gee, it's one thing he told us the truth about. So, you know, you're going to have inflation, folks. You're going to have rising interest rates. Trust me on this. Interest rates are going to rise. For those of you who are thinking of selling your house, you don't want to wait around till mortgage rates are 10%. For those of you who are thinking of buying a home, you don't want to wait around till mortgage rates are 10%. Try and lock in your cost of financing. If you go down to the bank and do a deal, try and get a floor and a ceiling. I talk about this in my Land for Love and Money book, you know, which is about all sorts of facets of business and business-related real estate and real estate-related business, and it was named Best Real Estate Book of the Year in 2012, Best Business Investing Book. Lock in a floor and a ceiling. Mr. Banker, I agree to your floating rate, because all the bankers want floating rates now because they know rates are going up. But let's say it can't go above 7% and can't go below 4%. Lock it in, folks. Very important. You don't want some floating rate out there on your HELO or on your car loan or on your business line of credit, and suddenly you're going to be paying 10, 12, 13, 14, 15% interest. You're not going to last long if that happens. And you're getting dinged by inflation at the same time. It's a double whammy. If you're paying 15% interest and have a 10% inflation rate, what are you losing? 25% a year? Can't stay in business unless you're the United States government, losing 25% a year. The head of the Dallas Federal Reserve, his name is Fisher. He did an article on November 4th, and it's going to be posted on the site in Money News. Quote, I'm not a proponent of increasing government spending without restraint. Quote, the excessively over-indebted U.S. government has, as mentioned, been hogtied, prevented from providing stimulus. It has thus played a counter-cyclical, suppressive role. The inability of our government to get its act together has countered the pro-cyclical role of the Federal Reserve. We have a government that hasn't been able to agree on a budget in 5 years. Actually, the Democrats didn't even propose one for 4. And then he talks about regulations. When he talks about hogtied, this is the chairman of the Dallas Fed. He talks about regulations. And regulations are going to get worse now that the Democrats, again, after screwing you on Obamacare and screwing you on taxes and lying to your face, have blown up the filibuster rule, which will come back to haunt them at some point in the future, in the Senate. And judges will be appointed at a court which oversees the regulators, who are promulgating regulations like there's no end to tomorrow. Obamacare so far, as an example, has 11,588,500 words in its regulations. That's 30 times more than the bill, and they're not even done yet. All right, look. The point here is, overall, be informed. Number 2, think big picture. Number 3, think out of the box. Think about the what ifs. Do not take anything in your daily lives, whether it's health or food or water or whatever, for granted. Think about what would happen if suddenly it stopped. What kind of position can you get your family in to be able to withstand that for a week, for a month, for a year, whatever you can do? And if you never have to do it, terrific. And if I'm wrong about all this stuff, terrific. I hope I am wrong about every single thing we are talking about here today and that I have had on this show for the last 2.5 years. I hope I am flat, dead, upside down, 125% incorrect. I fear that will not be the case. By the way, as an aside, support businesses which support the Constitution. Support businesses which support conservative ideals. Do not feed money to the enemy. If there are progressive businesses out there, or businesses which promote progressive causes or give huge campaign contributions to Obama like GE, do not buy their products. Do not give aid and comfort to the enemy, and be assured, these people are the enemy of faith, your family, your Constitution, and your pocketbook, and your freedoms. Their goals cannot succeed unless you lose on all those fronts. So now, on a more fun subject, the books. Book 3 of Uncompahgre. You know, I'm writing this series kind of like why I do the radio show, because I love this country. I love to write too, and I love the story, and I love these characters. I mean, I'm the author, so I'm totally biased, but they're my friends. And the story is so fascinating, the research that I do. You know, the Best Historical Fiction Awards won 2 more awards here in the last 2 months, 15 national awards in the last 2 years. And the ones probably I'm most proud of, Romance is great and Western is great and all that stuff is historical fiction because that's the attaboy for the research. This is a huge story. It's the story of us. Begins in 1854. It'll end in the real time of the contemporary West. You'll be following many lineages over 5 generations, an epic saga. And it's a huge project. And I love it. I really do. And it's really more than a Western. It's more, I think, than an historical fiction. It's more than a romance. In fact, there's many threads of romance and many different threads of lives that you're following from many different origins. I'm going to read you just a couple of excerpts right now. Book 1, Threads West. You have brave men, independent women, many from Europe, Denmark, England, Ireland, Norway, Prussia, and Americans. And it's a story of how they get here, how their lives are intertwined by fate and circumstance. And then in Book 2, they're swept into the dangerous currents of the far distant frontier by the mysterious rivers of fate, the power of the land, American spirit, secret maps, hidden ambitions, diverse cultural traditions, and magnetic attractions inherent in lives forged by the fires of love, loss, hope, sorrow, life, death, shape the futures and the destinies of their lineage. And then in Book 3, which is on its way, folks, the first of the next generation of the Threads West characters are born. And the characters who have reached Cherry Creek, pre-Denver, 1855, some must decide to pursue or abandon torrid love affairs that have flowered on the dangerous journey from Europe and across America. There's events shaking their lives they can't foresee. The life threads of these characters' uncommon cultures and competing ambitions are melded through fate and history. The Ogallala Sioux family struggles to cope with the inevitable change casting shadows upon their lands and culture and their sacred traditions. The elderly slave couple and a renegade and his young traumatized captive that was introduced in Maps of Fate, Book 2, are bound ever more tightly to the arc of the story. Mormons stream west in the Great Exodus, escaping persecution and searching for Zion. And driven north by the Texas Rangers, there's an outlaw vaquero with royal blood who's questing for a new sense of self and place. It's a cast of characters. It is really, in many ways, the story of us. In fact, it is the story of us. It's a story of many threads of uncommon cultures, differing origins, competing ambitions that weave into the American spirit. Lineages, lives woven on the loom of history, propelled by fate and freedom to form the tapestry that becomes the whole cloth of the nation. It's uniquely American, this mosaic we have. We are a tapestry, not a mosaic. I'm going to read you a few excerpts from Uncompahgre itself. Tears came to her eyes, and the expanse before her blurred. She blinked them away and looked to the west. The sun hung suspended behind dark, silhouetted mountains, the thin layers of softly glowing clouds laced with silver and bold strokes of fiery orange-red. Underlying them, a deepening purple sifted down from the highest peaks and curled around the foothills, spreading like a fog of color across the rolling plains. This land, the people, I had no idea how it would call to me. Transfixed by the sheer power of the scene, Sarah felt tiny and insignificant, yet empowered at the same time. So many choices. The next excerpt. With lowered head, he watched the two riders approaching. One was medium build, square-shouldered and moving easily with a big palomito underneath him. The other was tall, very tall, with long blonde hair. Something in his posture screamed military, or maybe law. Without moving other than the slightest turn of his head, Filippi said in a low voice directed back at the teepee, "Woman, bring one of my pistols and the smoothbore. Pronto!" Filippi stood slowly, wanting to appear nonchalant. The next excerpt. Her eyes bolted open when her fingertips failed to find his warmth, and she realized he was no longer under the buffaloes with her. The unsettling events of the previous evening flooded her memory. The hide walls of the teepee flowed softly from the last embers of the night fire, silhouetting her husband's naked figure as he squatted, facing away from her. She watched him poke and prod at the coals in the fire ring, throwing his prodding stick into the ring with a sigh, shaking his head and whispering to himself. His shadow danced on the wall in the tremble of the firelight. The next excerpt. Reuben stood lazily, his Navy Colt in one hand, gunpowder smoke still rising several feet above the muzzle. One of the other men moved, and there was a distinctive hammer click of Johann's sharps, which he had raised to his shoulder. Reuben's jaw clenched. He grimly cocked the hammer of the Colt. "I don't push, mister. You got exactly 2 seconds." And the next and last excerpt. He obliged, lowering his lips and kissing the top of her head. Her arms tightened, and he began to repeat the gesture, but she raised her head and intercepted his kiss with her own. Just a brush of parted lips at first, then an increased pressure tinged with passion. She was standing just inches away, her brown eyes wide, teary, looking up into his, full of sorrow and something else he couldn't quite fathom. She slowly let the blanket fall from her shoulders. She wore nothing but sheer silk chemise, almost transparent, every curve of her lithe young body glowing in the low light, the pink of her nipples erect, clearly visible and straining against the filmy material. Despite his surprise, he could hear the sudden rush in his ears. His voice was stilled as she raised her other hand to his mouth, touching his lips with the tips of her fingers. "Don't talk. Not a word." Her fingers tugged at his belt and fumbled with the buttons of his breeches. I hope those of you who are already Threads West fans, and there's hundreds of thousands of you out here and many down in the Colorado Springs, Front Range of Colorado, throughout Wyoming and Montana, I hope you enjoy the next books in the series. There's a complete outline of the books, www.threadswestseries.com. Yesterday started our Black Friday sale. There's all sorts of cool gifts, throws, and Santa's sleighs with the books, and the publishers really did a terrific job. Check it out, threadswestseries.com. Great deals, great prices, wonderful Christmas gifts, and really, really nicely packaged. And for those of you who haven't started the series, please come down and see me at the signings. You can also get the books on barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, and grab that book one. You know, I'm the author, I'm biased. I think you'll like it. And I want to thank all my listeners over the last 3 years, 300,000 of you every Saturday and another 50,000 or so on the web every week. I want to thank you for listening to me. I look forward to, again, bringing you on the right side on AM sometime around mid-2014. And I appreciate all the support. I appreciate all the response. So watch your top knot, folks, you know, as they used to say long, long ago. Have a great Christmas, a happy Hanukkah, terrific holidays, the best New Year's ever, healthy, wealthy, happy, safe. Remember to visit ontherightsideradio.com for my little podcasts every Saturday. They'll be short and loads of articles from all sorts of sources on all sorts of topics. It'll keep you in the know. And remember to visit threadswestseries.com. Enjoy the books, enjoy the shows, enjoy the articles. Stay safe. Reid Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio.